Welcome to today's episode. We have our three hosts, three presenters, Nani, Valerie, myself. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
I'm not. If we're being honest, 2020 is sucking the life out of everything and everyone. And I think it's important to note that there have been some stars, there have been some quality individuals, there have been some serious cases, and a whole group of people are just in mourning. And we want to take the time to recognize that right now it is okay to not be okay. And it is okay to reach out as well when you're not feeling okay. And just give us some things that we can pray for you over, and just wanting to express that you're hurting and we're hurting as well. Let's take the time to get to know us a little bit better before we start. Do you guys have any pets? And if so, what are they and what are their names?
Me? I have one pet. Well, currently where I live, I consider my pets back at home in Puerto Rico also my pets. But right now here in Florida, I have one golden retriever puppy who's about 4 months old. And his name is Kylo Ren Ben Solo Skywalker, all the names, Valentine Seawald. He was named after Kylo Ren from Star Wars. We're kind of Star Wars fans here. And he also has a dark side, which,
Oh my goodness.
That's the Skywalker. Hey, that's a cool name to give your pet.
Yeah, I love it. I love
I love the Star Wars references. Yeah, I have a cat. His name is Morocco Cairo Sigamani.
Cairo. Wow. That middle name though.
We were just like, Africa, come on, let's go.
Yes, I love it. Oh, Rocco, little Rocco. That cat is reckless. He's gone on some trips.
Oh yeah, he has. He's a cute cat. He's nice. He's a nice cat. He's sleeping right now. I'm watching him.
Little one. Well, Sebs and I have two dogs, two girl dogs, and they are a trip. They also have really long names. So the first one, we call her Zoe, Zoi, but her whole name is Soy la Divina María Guadalupe de Martínez López. And our second dog, we call her Sai, Zy, but her whole name is Soy la Teresa Cecilia Brigitte de Martínez López.
What? Brigitte. Where's that from?
I was looking for saints online because I wanted to give our dogs super like Latin Catholic names.
Okay.
So I was like, what are some female saints? And there was Brigitte, Cecilia, and Teresa. So I was like, Tere. So that's where they came from. Reckless. I know, but they're like dignified.
They are. I can imagine them like, my name is.
They have the attitude of their names, honestly. Like Nani was saying with Kylo, like he has that like little dark side. They're super sassy dogs. But gotta love them. Alrighty, today's topic is near and dear and very important to today's times. And so we are going to start off right away with voting. Today's episode is going to be about voting. And so wanting to start off with a little bit of the history of voting. Right now, you see that it states history on voting for the Latinx community, but I feel like there's a little bit more history on voting prior to that. So, as we know, there's only one group of people that have been allowed to vote since the beginning of this country. Shall remain remained. They shall remain unnamed. You should know who you are. Period. Honestly.
Know who you are.
You should know who you are. And if you put some kind of emoji on there, we just thank you for acknowledging it. You know who you are. If you don't have an amendment that allows you to vote, you've been able to vote in this country for a long time. So yeah, getting called out a little bit this morning. But history of voting for other groups of people has happened since the inception of this country. And so we know a little bit, as we talked about in previous episodes, kind of about like women's history and women's suffrage, where early on within the 17 and 1800s, you had the women marching, fighting, and rallying for the ability to vote. Then in the 14th Amendment, we get the African American male to be able to vote. And so like, I feel like with this historical timeline, you're like, oh, check, we got that group. Check, we got that group. Check, we got that group. Everybody's represented. Wrong. There's still a lot of stuff going on with voting today. And so that's why we're here, to be able to express that. Some really important highlight cases within this historical timeline are the following. We get the 14th Amendment that allows for Black men to vote. However, African American men are not able to exhibit or to express and practice this voting unless they have a level of literacy, unless they pay poll tax, and unless they also own some land. So you blocked them there. Then within the 1920s, hooray, women are able to vote. However, we also know that there are certain groups of women that were only wanting certain groups of women to vote, blocking out the other groups to be able to vote. This particular group, or the 1920s, allow specifically for Caucasian women to vote, as they had several different rallies and conventions and presentations where they would fight and where they would talk to other representatives within their state in order to be able to vote. And so finally in 1920, 19th Amendment allows for women to vote, and now you have women's suffrage, but that's only for a certain group of people. Highlight case and a current theme that is going to be introduced early is the fact that you have a lot of pushback to be able to vote as an individual. And why you hear this a lot, I've said it myself as well. I need to fess up. I'm confessing my sins. Why should I vote if I don't see a difference? And you still have people like this that are like leading. So does my vote actually matter? Why should I care? Why should I take the time to go and understand that when I'm just going to have to subject to the Electoral College and nothing that I say matters? And so, however, you get a lot of pushback. You get a lot of pushback to my idea because of events that happened in 1960. Val, what happened in 1960?
So we have the Voting Rights Act, August 6, 1965.
Yes.
At a time of youth-led cultural and political upheaval and change, we had President Lyndon B. Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act, which is a treasure of the civil rights movement that enforces voting rights guaranteed by the 14th and 15th Amendments, which granted citizenship to anyone born or naturalized in the United States, and prohibited states from disenfranchising voters on the account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Sorry, did you have...
No, I just can't express how much I love that part. Specifically, It was called the pre-clearance. It's like because they were allowing for so many people right throughout history to be able to vote, but then states would come up with their own little side laws that didn't allow people to vote. And then finally the US justice system was like, okay, you want to create your own little side laws? You got to pass them through us. And I was like, yes! Love that little clause on there. Love that little part on there. And this 65 Act came with the loss and the beating and the hard work of many individuals, one of which was Martin Luther King and Representative John Lewis. Rest in power, Representative John Lewis. So yeah, 65 allows for you. We now have the entering of a new age, which is the civil rights movement, the Voting Rights Act in 71. We now lessen the age of voting from 21 to 18. If you're gonna ship people out to go to Vietnam, they should be allowed to vote. So now we've lessened the age, and different now increase amendments to that Voting Rights Act. One that I think specifically aligns itself with the idea of Latinx communities and the Latinx history of voting is the 1975 Voting Rights Act that expanded to protect language minorities, where
Yes.
now you're able to have these ballots in a different language. And that's really important. And then in 1980s, you have the ability of individuals that have disabilities to be able to vote. I love these. And so like these sound like little nice dates that sound like, oh yay, voting is now being able to be allowed for everyone. But what why do you shake your head no, Val? What is happening?
I mean, there's still so many ways that we are not able to vote. And at the moment, I'm thinking about those that are in prison, that are serving time. A lot of times they are not allowed to vote, depending on which state, including Florida, who just passed. I don't remember what the law is, but we're allowing those who have served time in prison that are no longer in prison, that are outside, to be able to vote if they have paid all of the fines and they're fully cleared. And that in itself is suppressing those who are in poverty, who are not able to afford paying the $65,000 in fines that they have in order to vote. So there are still several different things. That's just one of them. I don't know, Chan or Nani, if you guys have other ones that are still being done right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. For sure. Nani, you were about to say something.
No, yeah, the most common one that we've seen in, when we talk about voter suppression is voter ID requirements, and how, like Chan was saying, oh yeah, the whole, United States that is now encompassed until under this Rights Act, but we still have 23 or 25 states that have, enacted newly restrictive laws as of recent, regarding specifically voter ID. So why would they do that, in this moment, right before elections? Um, they also, one of the bigger deals with voter ID that some people say, oh, that's non-existent, is that we don't really think about, the Native Americans that are living in reservations that are required to have a PO box address to be able to vote. That's just
Yeah.
one of the things. You were going to say another one.
No, it was that they have the PO boxes, but you have to have an actual physical address in order
Address,
to be able to
exactly.
vote.
Mhm.
Yeah. And Nani, when you hear about the history, when you hear about these things, like what kind of emotions does it elicit? What kind of thoughts does it bring out?
I just think that it's an unfinished struggle, and that there's a certain degree of unequal progress. I'm talking as a US citizen, as an American citizen, born and raised in Puerto Rico. I didn't have the right to vote for the president of the United States.
Pause. Shock. What?
Yeah.
Puerto Rico being part of the United States, right? People are claiming we claim this. We're a part of the United States, not allowed to vote.
We are not allowed to vote for the president of the United States. The one person that, makes the rules for whatever lifestyle we have to endure, basically. And it's, our people still go and fight in the army and the navy and the armed forces. They're putting their lives for their country, and then they can't even vote for their president. It's we are second class American citizens. That's just the truth, and it's sad, and it's inconvenient, and that's why one of the reasons why I admire AOC so much is because she's like, hey, I am an American. And, everybody's like, oh, she's a Latina Puerto Rican. She's like, yeah, but I'm an American. And as of recently, she's like, we are forgotten. And I know someone mentioned in a speech that I'm not going to say what speech, that they were immigrants to this country, but they were Puerto Rican. And it's like, wow, you don't even want us, the American Latinos, That's just insane. But another thing that was rampant in Puerto Rico, I'm not saying that Puerto Rico is perfect and that, sugarcoat anything, but in the moment where it came to, the National Archive shows that these dark chapters in the suffrage history in Puerto Rico as a territory, it wasn't covered by the 19th Amendment. So the government remained free to discriminate on the basis of sex, which it did until 1929 to enfranchise only literate women. Yeah. It wasn't until 1935 that then all women were able to vote.
I feel like the history of voting is like, how can we give the least possible access to an individual? It's not like, here's voting, everyone be able to do it. It's like, you're going to get this much, and then you're going to get this much. And it's like, why do individuals have to feel like they're pulling teeth when they're paying taxes to you, when they're going and fighting your wars, when they're going and supporting your beautiful, beloved country? Yeah. But you're not allowing them the decency of the most basic right to be able to vote, to be able to have someone and elect someone that is going to represent them. Yeah.
If you give me, I just want to give a quote here that I feel like was so powerful. And it really just gets kind of like the reaction to this whole thing, because I don't know, it's just a lot. So this is by Jelani Cobb, who was a writer at the New York Times. And he says, it is entirely possible to both be a country capable of electing a Black president and one that still needs strong legal protections for Black voters. The idea of the past as a pendulum is not an argument against the possibility of progress. It is a warning against the belief that progress can easily and passively be made permanent. And like, what I think about is that, and this is like where we were talking about this earlier, the whole 2013 thing and what's going on now. I just think about, man, like, we can never really think to ourselves that progress, that equity, that justice, that love, or any of these things are things that will fall onto our laps. And once they do fall into our laps, or we fought for them, that they'll stay there. There are active measures being done in order to suppress people, to oppress people, to make sure that their voices are not heard. And we need to be aware of the fact that that is happening, and that it's not just going to just come naturally because the world is so good. We're in a world of sin. It's not going to happen.
You threw that date out of nowhere, Val. What exactly was it that occurred within 2013? If you could, I'll help you. Tag.
Go ahead, girl.
Tag. Do it. In 2013, she threw that like straight. 2013, the Supreme Court strikes a blow to the Voting Rights Act, where they took out that initial clause that made it so beautiful, the pre-clearance. They kind of removed that, so states immediately took advantage of that, some within the day that it was taken away, in order
sorry.
States that have historically tried to create voter suppression in past, these states now brought once again barriers to voting with a heavier hand. It felt like within now this next wave of voting. So let's continue to thank you, Val, for that quote. That was really incredible. It's the idea of this country. It always has these two dichotomies, and you're just like, I love you so much, but I hate you so much. Like, what? You have the potential of being so incredible and so great, yet sometimes you just choose to not be. And why? I'm being very candid with my feelings right now about this nation. So, for all you patriots out there, I appreciate you, but we can all do better, right? Right. So can someone explain to me, what is the importance of voting? Like, what makes it so poignant?
Yeah, I think that before we touch on that, I wanted to touch back on voter suppression, because there's certain people that believe that it does not exist. And I'm not just saying just like Juan por su casa, or like el Pepito por el camino. It's like people that are higher up, like I'm going to say names, Chief Justice John Roberts, who said when when people were claiming that when these states were changing their voting ID laws, that this was suppressing the vote and it was targeting specifically African Americans. He was like, oh, this is decades old data and eradicated practices. I'm just reading his quote. And it's like, no longer such a disparity for communities of color. But thank the Lord for our dear RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she says, throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet.
Yep. That's exactly the quote that I read. Exactly when they took out that pre-clearance, she was like, it was working this whole entire time. And so just because it was working and you didn't physically see the actual repercussions of it, you just decide to let go of it. It's just like,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
these voter suppressions come in all kinds of ranges, right? Like the main one we see is that voter identification, but it's also the amount of hours that they're available, where you have certain groups of people that have to work late hours, and you're going to create specific voting times and specific hours of operations within your setting. Also reducing the ability for individuals to have early voting, not having the nice widespread amount of languages to be able, or having different languages to be able to provide for an individual for their ballot so that they can understand what it exactly that they're doing in their practice that they're working on.
Yeah, or even like voting roll purges, like we saw. I was mentioning to you guys with Stacey Abrams when we saw in Georgia how people were being turned around, or because they were supposedly not American, or because they didn't have the voter ID that they needed. It's like, what, you're turning me around because I'm an immigrant, supposedly I'm not American when I am? Like, I'm not understanding. Or closing the polling offices early, like you said. And just something as simple as not knowing how to fill out a ballot, you know?
I become angry listening to this. It should elicit something. You shouldn't just be left like, okay, like this is occurring, and it should elicit something within you. And like I stated before, acknowledging my sins. Initially, there was that ignorance and that ambivalence towards voting, where now reading and creating the research, there should be something that strikes within you, that these suppressions and that these restrictions that you're providing groups of people should not be there if you are going to claim that you are the great nation that you are. So then reeling it back to why voting exactly is important. What is the importance of voting? If anyone can help answer that question for me.
So basically, we are underrepresented in the polls, because of the same thing that you were talking about, Chen. Like, estamos desanimados. We're like, why even vote? Why even go? So they're used to us being like that, thinking, oh, my voice doesn't matter. And just by going, even though you might have a certain ambivalence towards certain candidates, or just voting in general, just by voting and people seeing your face there, and you have, voicing your beliefs, is a huge step in the right direction in changing the whole culture or the whole practice behind voting and voter suppression. And we need to think about not only as an expression of our beliefs, but also as a choice with consequences, and that we want there to be the right consequences, if that makes sense. Maybe consequence is not the right word, but the outcome that will benefit everybody collectively. As with Ruth Bader Ginsburg's quote is like, oh, just because, basically calling this person out is like, oh, just because it doesn't affect you doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So by me voicing my vote, it means that I am putting myself out there, and I'm giving my opinion, and I'm saying, hey, people like me, brown people, African Americans, Black people, we have the right to vote as well, and we're here making our voice heard. And I think that matters, and it just matters. It doesn't matter who you vote for. What matters is what happens in the world as a result. And you are one of those people that, had a hand in that.
I think jumping on what you stated about what happens in the world, Nani, for me, it comes to the most basic point. And I feel like we cannot have a topic or a talk on voting without expressing the issues, the current issues that we face within this nation, the current things that we see. And you have individuals that are going out on the streets, that are marching. You have activists that are rallying up. And we have to ask ourselves, why? And you have to ask yourself, how? How am I going to make the change? And one of the easiest ways in which you could create the change, in which you could take the people that are going to demand justice, that you can put and place people in positions of power that can help to create a change, that whole process happens via voting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's true. And I think
I was just going to say that it's just going to keep getting harder, if we don't show up to the polls, if we don't demand that our vote is counted, because that's another real thing that happens. And we need to keep our legislators accountable, and the only way to fight against those who want to suppress our vote is by doing the only thing that they don't want us to do, voting.
Yeah, 100%.
What were you going to say, Val?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just going to say something that you were kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying, Chantal, is that a lot of the times maybe we can think, and I might be jumping ahead here, that voting counts is just by casting the ballot. But we have to understand too that our representatives are there to represent us. And that means that those who are in your local counties and your local districts, like these are the people that you need to be speaking to. And I think a lot of times, like Christians are like, like I don't want to get involved in politics issues,
church and state,
right? Like the separation of church and state, which is important, like it is important that we do not impose our religious beliefs on other people. But at the same time, understand that we have to be fighting for the rights of people. And in order for that to happen, we need to voice our opinions, and we need to call our representatives. We need to write, not just that, but we need to organize. Like we need to gather together with other people within our local context and ask them, if these are important issues for you, then we need to gather, we need to organize, we need to speak to our representatives with a very poignant manner and ask them to move in ways, because we are saying that this is what we believe as a county, as a city, as a whatever. Like those are really important parts of being a part of this political system or this country in general as well. And just to speak to the Christian context, like the whole like freedom, rights, equity, justice, love, all of these things are things that we must practice as Christians. And not just practice it, we have to fight for it, like, because we live in a sinful world and we can't just believe that these beautiful kingdom values will fall into our laps. They require action. If we want a fair and just society, that we as followers of Jesus and citizens of Zion believe in, we have to march for those things. We have to organize for those things. We have to vote for those things. And that's all a part of the political process. And I think a lot of time, like something that I really have a hard time with now, and honestly, like sometimes I get down on myself, is that I see a lot of Christians and the Christian spaces say that if a certain issue doesn't affect me, then I won't get involved, but like, I think about what Martin Luther King, and this is a beautiful thing about the civil rights movement and how it was ingrained with the biblical beliefs. And I would also say even not just biblical, but like Judeo-Christian beliefs, because Muslims were very involved as well. Jews were involved as well. Like, I just think about MLK's quote, Martin Luther King Jr.'s quote, where he says, "I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." And then if that's not enough, if MLK is not enough for you as a Christian to get involved, I think about Isaiah 62:1 that says, "For Zion's sake, I will not hold my peace. And for Jerusalem's sake, I will not rest until her righteousness goes forth as brightness and her salvation as a lamp that burns." And that's just like, we as Christians cannot settle for less. Like, if we really truly believe in these kingdom values, then we have to fight for it until it burns as brightness. If we truly believe that we as a people can burn as brightness and with righteousness, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be this way, basically.
I love that you're bringing that Christian context to us today, Val, and specifically saying like people have these lofty desires and they love to say that, oh, I want that for someone, I want to see. And it's like, and you understand. And a principle that I have now chosen and written down to live by is to try to live out the kingdom of heaven that I so desire here on earth, and making that as accessible and able for every individual, every creed, every race, every group. Make that a livable experience while I am here on earth. Because if I could practice it here in this sinful, marred area, how much better is it going to be once you get, to the kingdom of heaven?
And I think that the beautiful thing too about the way that you're putting it is that you want everyone else to experience it, is that example of Christ's sacrifice of like, it's not just for me to experience, like it doesn't stop there. It has to be everyone. So I'm going to do whatever I can and sacrifice whatever I have to, whether it be my time, my money, my efforts, my if I'm pained, if I'm brutalized, like whatever it is that needs to happen in order for me to be able to fight for the rights of other people.
I love that. Thank you, Val, for bringing that aspect to us. Let's take a turn to a little bit more of the practical sense. So we've talked a little bit about the theoretical, right? Like, how exactly does one go forth in order to be able to vote? Like, how does that whole process work? If you can explain that to us, Nani.
Yeah, it's so accessible now. There's really no excuse to not register to vote. Like you said, in 1993, you could register to vote while getting your driver's license. And even when you renew it, you can register to vote as well. If you are going through the naturalization process, you can vote. You can register to vote right after you've been sworn in, which is amazing as well. And for those of us, those that are already, U.S. citizens, you can just go to vote.gov and register to vote. It's pretty simple. Register online is available in 39 states plus the District of Columbia. You can download the National Mail Voter Registration Form. For me, at least in Florida, it was mailed here to my address, to my apartment, and it was really easy. I literally just had to check one box and sign my name and send it back. It already has postage included, which was, for me, it was mind-blowing because it's my first time being able to have this right or perk.
Right. Yo, that's powerful, Nani.
Wow.
That is powerful. I didn't even think about that until right now.
Yeah. I mean, I voted, my first presidential election was 2016, and we all know how that went, which was kind of discouraging and personally. But I feel like it has just given me more amp to just like, I have to vote and I have to help other people, have that same passion. And basically it's just information and giving them this information that like I didn't know was available. Like registering online and all that. And like apart for me, it was like only voting in person. But there are so many states that offer voting by mail, which is being attacked right now by the current
administration.
But one of the things that I'm more adamant about now is that if you can vote by mail, acknowledge you have that perk and make the best out of it. And I really enjoyed this voting for the primaries, which sometimes people think it's not really important and blah, blah, blah. Well, voting for the primary is actually very important. So there are still some states that haven't voted for the primary. So keep a lookout. The best thing is just to search online. It has all the information. Local, state, and congressional candidates are chosen through those primaries. And like Val was saying, it's those smaller positions as well that are our voices, probably closer to us and understand our struggle. Let's say like someone from Miami is not going to necessarily understand someone from Tallahassee, and they're not going to speak the same way or vouch for us in the same way. And I'm talking in the context of Florida, where we are right now. But again, each state has their own deadlines and election dates. So I just urge you to go to the usvotefoundation.org and you literally just select your state and it'll tell you when your deadline is. For us in Florida, I'm going to talk about Florida. We, again, like I said, we have the vote by mail. You just have to check that box. And what really helped and what I really liked personally was that I was able to sit down with my husband, and we were able to, look up these candidates and understand what their platform is and what their vision is for us, at least here in Miami-Dade. And I encourage you to do the same, because then we can make an educated you know an educated decision, which actually influences. Because sometimes we just go to the polling and we're like, okay, I was planning to vote for the mayor, but what are all these other names? I have no idea who these people are, what their vision is for where I'm at. Let me just guess, that I'm just being honest. I don't know. People are there are other people that are very adamant about this and educated themselves. So that's what I recommend when voting by mail. It's pretty straightforward. The deadline for voting registration is October 29th, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check. October 24th, sorry. That is the deadline for the mail-in ballot as well.
Something.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Don't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to something that you taught me, Nan, or that you were telling me, was that someone could register their family as well.
Yes. There's this amazing resource page. Val, what was the name of it again?
Voto Latino.
Voto Latino, was it? Voto
.org.
Latino. Amazing resource. Like so many options there. But yeah, you can vote as a conjunto. Like you can help your family members register to vote, which is a huge deal that I had no idea existed.
So I think it's important, at least for me. I feel like I'm spitting all this information. I feel definitely called to place some of these links and some of this information within the comments section so that these links can be shared with other individuals, because I think, Nani, what you've definitely expressed is that a lot of it is just having other people become educated about what their rights are, how to vote, how to assist someone else to vote, getting to know who the individuals within your local government are in order to have the best communities and have the best options for our communities, like you were stating, Val. Thank you, Nani, for sharing all that information with us. It's definitely really important to note. How does one go about learning about what the issues are, Val?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my computer was dying, so I had to unplug my microphone for a second. But yeah, so some of the ways that you can do it, and I'm trying to be as considerate as possible when talking about these things. I understand that there are people, like I think about my grandma who, is a Latina voter, but she doesn't necessarily know how to get educated on these things. She doesn't have access to the internet. Or isn't going to, take the bus to go to whatever town hall, however far away it is. So I'm trying to think of different ways, but one of some more simple ways that maybe more people who are watching right now have access to is going on the internet, watching some of these town halls, attending these things, because that is how you're going to know who these people are. You have to interact with your representatives. You have to interact with some of those issues by reading articles. Sometimes a newspaper, local newspapers will have really good information on what's going on locally in your context so that you can understand some of these issues a little bit better. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Maybe help me guys with some of these, getting to know some of these issues.
I know we definitely understand as pastor spouses the amount of work that a pastor has to do, but I think something that I find really helpful was that with the events that happened and the killing of George Floyd, the sheriff of our county called for a pastor's meeting, and he wanted to speak with the clergy of the different area to be able to express what the sheriffs were doing in order to help their community, right? In order to
That's
assist their
beautiful.
community. And so, like, I know a lot of the time pastors kind of take on this huge role about being representatives and lawyers and grocery shoppers and like all these other things, but that was a way I felt that needs to occur. Just being an open book, being open about this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to help. And so the sheriff was held accountable to this clergy because they said, we see that there's going to be some marches within the area. We just wanted to provide some men to help and to protect the marchers specifically. And so it was an opportunity to be able to become informed with a certain branch of local government. And so that's another way I feel that could occur if that's something that an individual feels like I'm my personality is like that. Like I'm going to go knock on the door and say like, "Hey, I'm going to take the time to hold a meeting with you and I have these specific things that I would like to know. Can you answer me these questions?" And then going out in turn and being able to tell other people about it and being an advocate in that sense. So I don't know if that's also another way, Val, that can assist.
I also think about ways that we can get our family members involved. Again, like just because I know that access may be there, but whether or not we have the time and availability, or in general, the access transportation to do some of these things, or the internet to do some of these things. I think that maybe as young people, we can reach out to our family. Wow, it's getting really dark. We can reach out to our family. We can show them the videos on our phone. In Espanol, Univision a lot of times has things that they do in order for them to be able to understand some of the issues. But they also maybe need our translation, especially as Latinx people, like bicultural people that have different languages, that sometimes these things aren't available in other languages. So we can be the translators for our family to help them understand some of these issues and bring them forward to them. So that's another way to just continue to inform ourselves as young people, and then also to inform our families, because I think that it's not just about our vote, it's about all of our vote, and that includes our families. So yeah.
I think having that conversation with your family members and asking them, are you a voter? Are you registered to vote? And going through, we also learned by Nani that there are ways that you can assist your family member in order to be able to vote. Nan, did you have something that you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to add to that more of like a recap in the sense of like, and also bring about forward that 32 million Latinx will be eligible to vote by 2020, which is huge. And that 3 million of those young Latinx have turned 18. And I just want to, encourage all of them to go out and vote, because voting is the most effective way to make, our voice heard. And on issues that matter to us most, as Val and you were saying, our families, there are certain family members that, can't vote because of, immigration status or not being able to, get transportation or whatever the challenges may be. So us that we are able and are privileged in a sense to be able to vote and go out there and cast, make our voice heard. If the other thing that I don't think is very present, it's because if we don't vote, others will, we are the ones that are being like more picky about it. But, maybe you're not into politics, but guess what? Your boss is, or your neighbor is, and your landlord is, and your insurance company is. And every day they're using that political power to keep your pay low, to raise your rent, to deny you coverage. So when you don't vote, these decisions will get made and they affect you, but you won't have a say over that.
Wow,
And I think
Nan,
that's huge.
you are hitting something so important. Something that I see so often is I'm not into politics. So why do I have to go vote? That's not my thing. We're kind of really not into politics. And it's like, technically, you are if you live in this country and if you are receiving rights and if you're buying and selling, living, having a house, doing whatever, you need to be into a certain set of issues. Like, even if it's the most basic housing, if it's the most complex, like international policy and global climate and policy change, it doesn't matter if you are being a member. And that's something that my teacher said, and I feel so annoyed that I sound like my teachers right now. But it's like, if you're a part of this community, then you are definitely being able to vote. And there's obviously things that are closer and dear to our hearts than other things. But wow, Nan, I think you said it really beautifully. So just to recap, I kind of want to ask you guys personally, why you believe your personal vote, but in general, why an individual's vote matters.
Well, I like what you just said, community. Like, it might sound, I don't know if what I've said or might have sounded a little selfish, but basically when I vote, I'm not thinking necessarily about myself. I'm thinking about my community and how specifically the Latinx community tends to face, particular challenges like racial profiling by law enforcement. Obviously, that's also our African American brothers and sisters, gentrification, housing affordability, unsafe workplaces, segregated public schools, immigration raids, ICE, and these issues, unfortunately, will not be addressed, if there aren't any Latinx voices in the table.
I love that you're bringing about this idea, Nani, that voting is a collective thing and voting is about a community. And my personal high stance that I try to educate others on is that if I'm going to claim myself as Christian, and if I see the example that Jesus gave and that Jesus wasn't focused on his own needs, right? The Son of Man didn't come onto this earth to serve him, but to serve others, is what we read specifically in the Bible. What I saw from the previous presidential election, was that people said, well, this individual, this candidate says whatever he wants. But for me personally, I'm going to benefit from this. And that bothered me so much. So it was like, well, I see that the stocks are going to go up, or, oh, I'm going to get more money out of this. So I'm still going to go this route. And for me personally, that is not what I vote for. As you stated, Nan, for me, it is how can I have the best outcome for my collective group. As I stated before, this isn't about me. Living on this earth is not about how I gain, how I can make the next step, how I can climb up whatever kind of ladder. I am here specifically living on the face of this earth to be able to think about the other, to be able to serve the other, because that is the commission that has been given to me, to you, to all of us that live and breathe on planet Earth. Val, you personally, why does voting matter to you personally?
Yeah, I just got to say, that was the gospel right there you're preaching. And that is literally love. Love is to, like, I love how people are like, freedom, freedom, freedom. I want the government to not infringe on my rights. I want freedom, freedom, freedom. But what is freedom without love? Nothing. It is selfishness is what it is. Anyways, for me, honestly, I think really, really small. I guess maybe I'm thinking detailed because I'm thinking like there are real consequences to the things that I'm doing. I'm thinking about people that are in detention centers and how that's my fault, because me as a voting person needs to make my voice heard and loud enough in order for change to actually happen, which means that I need to do absolutely everything in my power to think about those people on a daily basis, to pray for them, to think about their suffering, to think about the things that they're going through, women and children that are being treated unfairly. So in order for me to continue to just think about that, I need to understand that my vote matters, my voice matters. And that's why personally, I get on my knees and pray, and I think about what I need to do next and act on how I can help this community. So that's that's for me.
Love it. I'm going to remind everyone that at the intro, there is a clause, there is an asterisk that says, all views are our own. However, if you feel convicted in any kind of way, or you feel that your voting practices are being a little bit attacked, remember that these views are our own. And if this is the Holy Spirit providing this heavenly guilt that we read about in 2 Corinthians, go on ahead. Do not ignore the Spirit. Do not ignore the Spirit. That's not a good thing to do. And if this elicits you to be able to think about others, then that's it. Go for it. Send me a private message. I can take it. We can have this dialogue. And I will pray for you. I'll be on my knees praying for you. So thank you guys. Thank you guys. Wow, for this powerful, powerful, powerful topic, this powerful session that we had in our sala, where I learned a lot of practical things, and I hope that the viewers did as well. Any last thoughts?
I have a 1, 2, 3 steps just as a recap. 1, check if you're registered. 2, register or update your registration. 3, add election day to your calendar. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I want to also remind you that we will have the link in our bio for all this information. And if you are wanting more resources, feel free to DM us, like Chan said, and we will happily send those over.
Thank you, Nan. Alrighty. Ciao from Las Doñas. Have a great rest of your day and go vote.
Yes.
Voting.